I'd like to have my sons today, and I'd like to reside with Marilyn. I have some volunteer work that I'd like to do, and for all of those that do have a caregiver that Medicaid pays for because you're indigent, yeah, I just wanted to mention that you have available to you some free legal representation that each and every state's going to pay for. Yes. Now, I've described what is known as the victim. Yeah. And nobody wanted to enforce what is known as the RCW 7.68.035. Yes. And as the individual that's been the recipient of default judgments where there was no obligation to serve me before having court hearings, I'm wanting to use, yes, the court system of the United States. Now, we went through the lobbyists of the United States and their contribution, yes, as attorneys to the pro bono needs of the indigent, yes. But there's this idea of filling these out where you involves bribery, extortion, embezzlement, illegal kickbacks, yes, tax evasion and fraud, conflict of interest, making a false statement, perjury, or money laundering. There could be some tax evasion for each and every law firm of the United States that overestimates their pro bono work. Yep. Now, since the government pays $125 an hour for any legal counsel, yes, yes, yes. Could you add up? I'm wanting to take over quite a few law firms, and if it went from 1,000 to 10,000 attorneys representing the indigent, I know how important it is for you to get that $500 to $1,000 an hour. Yeah. But when I, yes, could not get an attorney to represent me, I just couldn't get an email from anyone that wanted the case. And I have, the local government obstructing my rights as a father. Huge. I'm going to want to know how much you deducted off your income taxes and if there was any tax evasion on the part of any law firm of the United States. Now, there's this fraud of issuing court orders where it's a default judgment for failure to appear. Yeah, it's a little different lawsuit than I've described in the past. Oh, see, there's the due process of notice and opportunity to be heard. Yes. hmm And then there's the obligation of the petitioner to have to appear in court to acknowledge the court order. Yes, yes, yes. That requires a signature because of the LEIS and all the other conditions of issuing any sort of court order. Yes, it does. But then there's the fraud of the default judgment where you said we attempted to serve him twice, but we didn't. Yeah. Where you committed a fraud of issuing default judgments of a dissolution of marriage, yes, settlement conference setting hearings, yes, and each and every one of the protection orders. Now I'm going to sue you, yes, for what's known as failure to appear default judgment. Yeah. And for all of you judges out there, that do recognize that an individual at their option, yes, can or cannot appear if they want to. Yeah. There is the idea of serving the individual notice of court hearings. Yes. You cannot award, yes, as in give to the petitioner a default judgment. Yes. And no cowgirl's going to say, no, Auburn follows proves that as long as it's a valid protection order, we can issue it. And as long as we protect your due process rights after the issuance of it, yeah. But I was served in the Squid Public Library right now. Cowgill, you idiot. The actual law says it's a fraud to not require a personal service. Yes. Two attempts of that, and then mail or publication. Yeah. You can't use the mail and publication to start with. No. You can't say, well, I don't know where the individual's at, and I want a default judgment for failure to appear because there was no actual attempt of service. Yes. And then when the Squint Police Department served me because they called me on my cell phone, kind of let me know, yes, we don't want you to appear in court. Ah! And then they waited approximately 9 weeks after the court hearing to attempt service, yeah, where the public court record says I was not served. It sounds stupid that I personally went to the police department to ask them, is there anything that I need to know? But I'm sure the chief of police understands and appreciates how nice I was. Yes. to go to the police and find out if there are any court orders that I needed to have knowledge of. And I waited a whole year, yes, for that court order to expire. And it's a fraud of issuing default judgments without the necessary rules of the Supreme Court of Washington State. Yes, where somebody should have told me as an indigent homeless man that, the court will pay for you to have an attorney. Oh, is that right? Would they enforce the jurisdiction of Guam stipulation and order that the Washington courts would regulate any contact between Mr. Budnick, his wife, and his sons? Would they enforce any Superior Court of the United States?